friend, in case our friend Donna is not able to be here this morning. Can listen later, hopefully. Yeah, I think it might be a good time to just broaden the field of how we're practicing. I've talked about body awareness and spoken a little bit about the experience of the mind when we're on retreat. So we can be aware of thoughts arising and passing, and mental phenomena arising, emotions, memories, things that are playing on our mind will come up for us. We talked about that. But we also have, of course, as you know, the other sense doors operating. And when we're on retreat, things can be much less frenetic, much less busy. There's a lot less input, isn't there? But nevertheless, you know, we are seeing, hearing, smelling, and tasting as well. And so, you know, it can be, it's definitely part of our experience, always, to have these sense doors operating. And so we can bring this into our practice and bring in ways of practicing with the 6 senses, with all the different sense doors. And of course, tasting and smelling tend to be most operative when we have the meal, our breakfast, our meal for the day, and when we don't have a meal as well. We're not having, some of us anyway, not having an evening meal. And actually, it's quite interesting how we might have a drink of something or a little bite of some medicinal allowance. And so we'll really notice the taste and smell. Actually, they operate more in a more sort of powerful way when we're hungry, when we're not eating and drinking so much. The senses become heightened. And so noticing these things, noticing tasting, chewing, swallowing when we have our meal, it can be a really wonderful opportunity for meditation practice, to really mindfully eat. And it's just beautiful to have the opportunity to do this, rather than, you know, chatting and socializing, the sorts of things we often do over meals. Of course, there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it's lovely to actually be able to focus on what's happening when we have a meal. And the Buddha said, you know, for the monastics, you know, we shouldn't have a single mouthful of alms food without mindfulness. Really, that's our duty. Otherwise, we're not appreciating the gift of Dharma that we've been given. So we really need to take the opportunity. You know, we've received a great gift, our sustenance for the day. Let this be an encouragement for us to eat fully, mindfully, to be really present for every mouthful. And in this way, we really do receive the alms food in a very complete way. So tasting and smelling, yes, these senses come and go through the day. Seeing and hearing are with us pretty much all the time. And I must invite you during this talk, if you want to close your eyes and just be meditating, that's really very suitable. And on a retreat where, you know, we have our eyes closed a lot more of the time. And so that, you know, really reduces a lot of input. We can notice that. But when we're looking around, as we have to, when we get up, walk down the stairs, do walking meditation, notice the seeing and, you know, see how that brings in a whole other consciousness that comes and goes, that's constantly changing. And that consciousness, that contact, results in feelings in the body, feelings, and sometimes thoughts arise. We see something and we have a response to it. It's happening all the time. Sometimes it's fairly neutral. Sometimes it's more of a clear, pleasant or unpleasant feeling that arises in the body, and we have responses to these feelings. And hearing also, interesting with hearing, isn't it? We can't actually, well, we can stop hearing. We can stick lots of stuff in our ears, use really good earplugs, and bloss it all out. And often you see people out on the streets, don't you, with ear things in. And I guess probably they're listening to loud music or something, I don't know. But I sometimes think, well, they can't hear what's going on around them. It's almost a little bit dangerous sometimes, crossing roads and such like. And here in Canmore, well, I feel like I have to have all my senses on the alert. Watch out for the bears, watch out for the maternal elks with their offspring, And this is really great because, I find going out for walks here, I'm very alert, and really looking around a lot more, just like all the animals have to do. Just looking around, being very aware of sights and sounds. But the hearing, we can't usually, it's not easy to stop hearing. And I find this a very valuable thing on retreat, because one of the things that we can pay attention to is hearing and listening to the silence, or not silence. Ajahn Sumedho, Luang Por Sumedho, of course, teaches, as many of you all know, one of his main meditation techniques, and the one that he uses all the time, is listening to the sound of silence. And he describes it as this sort of rather high-pitched, sort of constant sound that's there when nothing else is going on. So it's a kind of physiological experience of the ear sense doors, continual alertness, continual operation, And he finds this a very soothing object of meditation. It's always there, as long as we're alive. There is this slight ringing in the ears or slight tone to be heard in the silence. And of course, when one is tuning in to the hearing sense door, we pick up all the sounds around us. And it's very interesting to listen, because there's something for me about the flow of sound that is the flow of Dhamma. It's the flow of nature. There's an extraordinary rightness about every single piece of noise that comes in, particularly perhaps when we listen to nature, the birds and so forth. But actually, even listening to the diggers outside, the building works going on, people drilling up the tarmac of the roads, hammers hammering away, axes splitting wood, all the human activities around us. There's a certain sort of beauty. This is agreed type talking. For other people, it's certainly not beautiful. It's just all so irritating. But for me, there's a kind of harmony, because everything has its place in the field of sound. And actually, even if you feel, I so don't want to hear that dog next door, I so don't want to hear, the neighbours doing this, that, and the other. I just don't want it impinging on me. I want peace and quiet. Well, that's very fine too, because then you can observe the mind and its relationship with sound. So it's a rich field, really, to tune into the senses and to see how they are continually coming in and having their impact. There's the contact, isn't there? There's actually, the Buddha said, the contact of the outside object with the sense door. And then there's consciousness that arises. And from that consciousness, there's feeling that arises. So we can observe these things. Actually, these things are happening very fast, but we can get an overall sense, with some sort of repetitive noise, or we're looking at some object for a while, we can get a sense of, there's a response going on here. And just to be aware to that, aware of that. And paying attention to the sense doors is very energizing for our practice, because there's always something going on. There's so much to observe. It can almost actually be overwhelming when we tune in to the six senses. So we can choose, in fact. I've spoken about body awareness. That's a very good choice. But we can also choose to focus on hearing, for instance. And when we're having the experience of tasting, of seeing, of touching, really pay attention. So to bring this in as our meditation practice, so that we're constantly alert and aware of everything that's happening around us and within us. Now, the Buddha gave a very famous teaching on the six senses. It was his third sermon, his third teaching, early on in his ministry. He went to seek out some of his friends, his ascetic friends, a whole group of actually 1,000 fire-worshipping ascetics who lived nearby where the Buddha had been practicing for 6 years, all the austere mortifications that he indulged in before he realized this wasn't really working so well for him. So, excuse me. So he lived in sort of caves in the hillside for 6 years with his 5 companions, finding all different ways to torture the body and to deprive themselves of all the normal ways in which we look after our bodies and find comfort and well-being. And this hillside with its caves is very near a place called Gaya. And there's a hill in Gaya, quite a remarkable land formation. There's just this hill, a very discreet round hill in the middle of a very flat area. And on this hill and on this hillside, the 1,000 fire-worshipping ascetics lived and practiced in 3 different groups with 3 different leaders. And the 3 different leaders were brothers, the Kassapa brothers. One of them had 200 disciples, one of them had 300 disciples, and one of them had 500 disciples. And the Buddha went to see them soon after his enlightenment, and he taught them this fire sermon. And so they were spending their time tending sacred flames, which is something that still happens in India today. Certain Brahmin sects keep flames alight. I know there's one at Varanasi, at the Burning Ghats. They have a temple, they have a flame in the temple, and the job of the Brahmin priests is to keep the flame going. And they worship the flame, and that is their practice. In some ways, a very good practice, a practice of focusing on this object and giving their attention to this practice, this way. And I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of mindfulness and meditation going on. But anyway, the Buddha actually wanted to give the fire-worshipping ascetics his teaching so that they could liberate their hearts rather than perpetuating suffering. He could see that although they were practicing very well, they were still not seeing the way out of suffering, So he went along and they all gathered to listen to him. And he said to them, what you really need to realize is that these fires outside that you're tending are not the important fires that you need to pay attention to. Actually, the fires that you need to pay attention to are the ones inside. He said, look, just recognize, check this out. The eye is burning, sights are burning, the ear is burning, sounds are burning, the tongue is burning, the body is burning, the mind is burning, the nose sense door is burning. we're all on fire. And the fire is not actually the sense doors. He went on to explain that it's our holding on to, it's our relishing, it's the gratification that we experience in relation to the sense doors. The gratification and the aversion that can come up in relation to the sense doors, this is the burning. Why burning? Because we are, how to say, enamored of these things. We are deeply attached to these experiences. If we have some pleasant experience through any of the sense doors, we want more of it. And we can notice that. If it's unpleasant, we want to get away from it. And when we're on retreat like this, and in our daily practice, we really want to notice the kind of feverishness of that, the heat of it, the agitation of it, you know, how we are suckers for the senses. You know, we're enticed by them, we're enchanted by them. And he said, you know, that's all very well. The gratification is all very well, but consider this, there's a danger here, unfortunately. And the danger, of course, is that these things are constantly changing. So the inputs are constantly changing. They're not reliable. We can't hold on to anything out there. And the senses themselves are unreliable. They're subject to change. So the truth is really that we're like a big open, well, the word I want to say is wound. Forgive me if that's a bit strong, but we're like a big open wound that's just constantly being touched upon by all different experiences coming in at us. It's actually painful. It's actually very raw and sensitive, this experience. When we really pay attention, we can notice that. And it's helpful to notice that, because if we're not looking more deeply, seeing more clearly, what we actually experience is lots of gratification, lots of pleasure, you know, wonderful, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Wonder what's for lunch, you know, gosh, you know, I'll go out for a walk a bit later, never mind all this Dharma talk. I'll go out for a walk and have a good look around and enjoy the nature. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, really. You know, it's important to be kind to ourselves. This is natural. We enjoy life, but the point is that if we stay on that surface level, we're going to be, well, the Buddha said it's like the hook. We're going to be hooked in, just like a fish, you know, as the delicious worm wriggling about on the end of the hook. It's probably dead by now. Anyway, it's on the end of the hook, and the fish is attracted to this delicious morsel. Yum! And of course, then the hook is impaled upon the hook. Painful, painful, trapped, and there's no getting away. So it's an invitation. This teaching in the fire sermon, the Buddha said, you know, it's an invitation he was giving us to really notice, actually, when we enjoy input through the sense doors, we're getting hooked. We get caught up. We're no longer free. And this is happening all the time for us. So to consider the danger of this, consider how things are changing all the time. So we want to hold on to pleasant experiences, but we can't. You know, we want to get away from unpleasant experiences. Well, we don't need to try, because they're going to end anyway. Just stay with, you know, just be patient, you know, and see how things change. And so because everything around us, everything coming through our sense doors is subject to change, then it's really important to let go, let go, you know. So when we're working with the senses, let's be aware of the reality that it's a constant stream of experience. And it's a bit like we're on our canoe going down the river. And if we want to have a good journey, a safe journey, get to our destination, we want to just keep sort of to the middle and just keep rowing. So we don't go to either bank. We don't get caught up, you know. We don't get snagged in the shallow water near the banks. We don't want to get stopped and caught up on the banks. Well, it's just like that with the senses. You know, we see, hear, taste, smell, touch, or think something enticing, attractive, pleasant. It's as if we've just taken ourselves over to the bank and then we can kind of cavort and play and enjoy, you know, but we're not getting anywhere. If we want to follow and pursue the journey, you know, the journey to liberation, you know, we don't want to waste our time. We just want to keep moving. To keep moving along the river is to keep mindful, stay aware. And then we can actually watch the banks, you know, passing by. We won't miss anything in reality. We're just saving ourselves a lot of time. And in the end, the things that look really attractive to us, of course, end up disappointing us. I'll just invite you to see what you think of that statement. I mean, I could be wrong. The Buddha, I suspect, wasn't wrong. But, you know, he did invite us not to believe what he says, not to believe him, but just to try it out for ourselves. So really, he was telling us again and again in so many different ways that the things that we take pleasure in inevitably create suffering for us. And the things we take most pleasure in, most delight in, are the sources of the greatest suffering for us, you know. So we can just consider that, investigate that, and find out for ourselves. But as we find out for ourselves the danger in this world, then we can start to actually experience a taste of freedom. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that disillusionment is really the way forward. And through disillusionment, we come to freedom. So it can sound all a bit somber and dear, you know, life denying, but it's not at all, not at all, because we're not really alive when we're duped, you know, enchanted, entranced by the senses. We're not really alive then. We're just slaves of what comes at us. The Buddha said, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and thoughts that we experience now are old. These are old. It's karma. They come from the past. So there's reasons why we're here. There's reasons why we have the experiences we have. We have this life. This is old karma. Do we want to create new karma and keep going round and round and round endlessly? We create new karma when we relate to the old karma as me and mine, and we're taken in by it. We get hooked by it. When we do that, we're very liable to create new karma, new desires, whole new ways of suffering. You know, we just increase, we expand our repertoire. Do we want to do that? The alternative is to see all that comes at us is old karma. Okay, so I want to be free from this. I want to let go of this. So to have this hands-off attitude towards our experience, to see the danger, the unpredictable, ever-changing nature of this realm that we're in, to step back and we develop nibbida. We develop the quality of weariness, you know, wanting to get free from all of this, not wanting to continue rolling around in pleasure and pain, pleasure and pain, up and down, you know. It's sort of exciting in its drama, you know. It can be a bit enticing, the drama of it all. But actually, we start to recognize that, oh, peace is so much more pleasant for us. Peace, freedom, letting go. Oh, yeah. We can start to cool down. So these fires, well, we start to recognize them as fires, burning, agitating. And we can start to cool down through being willing on this retreat, in our daily practice, in our daily lives, just being willing to be the observer and to allow things to come and go and not to get caught up. When you notice you're moving towards something, some smell, sight, sound, taste, touch, thoughts, or you notice you're turning away from something, pushing away something, coming in through the sense doors, this is the time to be really alert. And it's happening all the time, all the time. So just staying mindful and staying steady. When there's reactivity, noticing that and being with the feelings in the body. How does it feel to want something, to want more? How does it feel to want to get away from, to have less of, to get rid of? Focusing on how it feels. And as we do this, we start to free up. We're with the danger. And then there is the release. The Buddha said, yes, there's the gratification in the sense doors, in the senses, in the sensory world. We're sentient beings. It's a constant for us. Yes, there's gratification to be had, to be felt. But there is the danger of getting hurt, caught up on the banks, stuck in time, losing our life, you know. There is the danger. Constant change is the reality. Don't hold on to anything. And then we can start to experience the release. Ah, the freedom, the coolness. My teacher, Lumpur Ganha, he's extremely cool. And he says, I have AC in the heart. In Thailand, you know, which is so hot the whole time. And he's very cool. He's always cool. He never looks heated or he never gets agitated for any reason whatsoever. It's beautiful to be with someone like that, who is steady, consistent, always loving, always calm, always kind. And he says, yeah, I have AC in the heart. So let's develop AC in the heart as much as we need it. The simile doesn't work so well in Camel because we don't necessarily need to cool down. We need to keep warming up. But I'm sure you can get the meaning. And it's interesting to note, isn't it, that the Buddha was teaching in India. I mean, India is super hot now, but even in those days, it was a warm climate. So a lot of the similes relate to cooling down. But we can understand what he's saying. And, you know, just notice the fire. Notice the fire. Consider these teachings. And just as you notice the fire, you know how to put the fire out. I really wish you well with this. And we can have a very energetic, dynamic day observing the senses. And, you know, it's good to open up to the different sense doors. And then if it becomes a little bit, you feel, oh, there is a burning, there is agitation, then coming back to the body, to anchor, to cool, to settle, to ground ourselves. And this is the way we can practice really well. Opening up to the sense doors is particularly helpful if we're feeling at all dull or bored, you know. It's getting a bit lethargic, our practice. And this is not uncommon because we're used to living busy, full lives. And then we come on a retreat and suddenly there's nothing to do. And I'm really hoping that people are able to allow themselves to let go of all the normal business of the day and do nothing but meditate, sit and walk. And so it's very common, this sudden shift of attention, for us to feel bored, to feel spaced out, to feel like this is a fruitless exercise. I'm not really getting anywhere. So if you have moments when you're feeling dull or lethargic or really struggling with nothing happening, open to the sense doors and make them your object of meditation. Hearing is a particularly good one. You can also practice with tasting and smelling at the meal times to make the most of those opportunities. So we're not getting caught up in gobbling down our food and kind of enjoying it, but not really being aware of what we're doing. Here we have a chance to slow it all down. When tasting, only tasting. When smelling, just smelling. And to experience each and every mouthful. And then we're really honoring, the givers of the food, the people, all the people involved in its production, huge numbers of people from all over the globe. How amazing. So to really slow things down and to focus on that part of our day. So just a few words there as an encouragement to broaden the practice as and when needed. And I wish you all a very good day, and you're welcome to sit and walk as you feel throughout the day. And we'll have meal at 11:30, come back at 1, and then we'll have a question and answer session at 4 o'clock. Okay, 1.